Hello everyone, and welcome to stage five. Stage five of the 7 stages of money. Okay, we've kind of gone to and right past the midpoint. 4 being the midpoint of 7. 1, 2, 3. Middle is 4, 5, 6, 7. You got me? We've come to the midpoint, and the midpoint, stage 4, I'll just kind of retract. So we're here at stage 5. I won't go through all the stages, but we found out that stage 4 is war. So at some point in time in this economic cycle and development, the government that has now formed and become a thriving nation, it now has built up a military and has had to put that military, or has chosen, of course, to put that military to use. And so stage 4 was simply war. We understand that war usually puts the nation in debt. It is covered through deficit spending, spending more money than you have, or borrowing money to fund this war, of which the cost of is now exploding. Okay, and so what does the government that controls money? Remember back in stage 2, I believe it was, when we got government quickly took control of the money supply, okay, as well as the rest of what was a free market. Okay, so what will the government do next? Now that there's more money going out than there is coming in, what do governments typically do? What have they done throughout history of over 2,500 years? Okay, or 2,500 years. So what is step 5? Step 5 is one word as well. Step 5, and I'm going to capitalize it all. It is simply debasement. Not the basement, debasement. Okay, debasement. All right. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm a smart guy, because I'm imagining some of you may not know what debasement means. That's not a big deal, okay? This is not over your head if you don't know what debasement means. Until you study some of these things and you research certain things, you won't know what certain things mean. All right, so if you don't already know what debasement means, I'm going to give you like layman's terms, okay? Debasement is inflation. Now, some people will like to think that debasement causes inflation, because we typically think of inflation as rising prices. Let me go to this side so that you can see where I'm writing. We typically think of inflation as rising prices, right? Well, that's technically not true. The rise in prices is more of a symptom of inflation, the result of inflation, rather than inflation itself. Okay, had the money supply not been debased, there would have been no inflation. Okay, so now that we know what it causes, let's look at what exactly is debasement. Okay, now I'm gonna give you all a mathematical thing. This is simple debasement of a current. You're debasing the money supply or the currency. Today we use currencies. In this example, we're talking about gold and sound money. So we're still at a point to where we are talking about gold. And in some societies, we were always talking about gold and silver. So what basically we're talking about, let's give an example. Let's say the Treasury takes in 1,000 coins. Okay, we're going to use coins because this is ancient. They would use coins for money, gold, silver coins. So they take in 1,000 coins, but they would send back out 2,000 coins. How did they do this? Well, they debased the coinage. They took what was gold and silver, and you bring in the gold and silver and you melt it down, and then you mix in a cheaper base metal, copper, zinc, palladium, things of this nature, to dilute the gold and the silver, the true value. These other metals are cheap. They have very little intrinsic value in comparison to gold and silver. And so you mix these metals in, and now instead of 1,000 gold and silver coins sent out, I send out 2,000 coins. But there's an aha here. These new 2,000 coins have half the amount of gold and silver that these old coins have. They have less, each coin has less value. This is debasement, or what we eventually see as inflation. This is good for an economy in the beginning because there's more money. There's more money to exchange for goods and services. But over time, what happens is the people, the markets, the people and the financial markets begin to recognize, wait a minute, these coins are not like these coins. These coins were 100% silver and gold, or 90% or 85%. These coins are 45% gold and silver, 50% gold and silver. This actually, while it is still done, has been done throughout history that use gold and silver, this is harder to do than what we do now, because now we use currencies. But when you did this, see these new 2000 coins, they had a different look than the pure gold and silver coins. They had a different weight. They had a different sound. And so over time, people will begin to realize this is a little different. These coins are different than these coins. Something about these coins just ain't right. They don't weigh the same. They're not of the same value. You see, and so you would have people then eventually go, well, if you're going to give me some of these coins right here, these 2000 coins, I need 2 of them instead of 1 for this loaf of bread. That is called inflation, okay, which leads to rising prices. But this is when the public, the mass of the public begin to catch on. It's when bread goes from 1 coin to 2 coins. They say, well, why is that? Well, it's because your money is cheaper. And the government, you might say, well, why does the government bother to do this? The government loves to do this because they spend it first. It's the same reason. First of all, let's make it clear. This is counterfeiting. This is legal counterfeiting. If you or I did this, we go to prison. But it is no different than the counterfeiter. See, if you could make money in your backyard or in your office, you would make that money and you would care not about the impact that it will have on the financial markets or the society later down the road when people catch on and prices go up. You would care not, because you get to spend it before everyone realizes that you debased it. This is the reason government debases it, because they need more money for higher expenditures, their war, and you won't catch on until it's too late for you to do anything about the fact that they have debased the currency. That is debasement. When you take it and you dilute it. If you debase paint, you add water to it. The more water you add to it, the less coverage your paint will do. You'd have to use more paint to cover the same wall. That's an example that I learned directly from Philip Judge. But it makes sense. Everybody can understand that. You take a can of paint, you add a bunch of water to it, you paint the wall, the paint doesn't cover the wall because it's loose. It's watery. And this is the same with the money. The gold is now watered down. The silver is now watered down. And so your coins have less value. That is called debasement. In ancient civilizations where coins were used, you had practices such as shaving. You can Google this stuff. Okay? Shaving, chipping. Okay? You can look at coins from the old Grecian, the old Roman Empire, things of that nature. You'll see pictures or in a museum, and you'll see that, I want to stand away from the board, you'll see that they're not circular anymore, you know, because when the government brought it in, they would do what was called shaving, and they'd shave an edge. You know, they would shave the outer edge of that coin and put those chips of gold, they collect those chips of gold and then use it to make more coins. But now your coin went out, it's a fraction less of weight than it used to be because it was shaved or chipped, okay? Today we have, once you have currency, and I think we should go into this. So let's talk a little bit about currency. What happens is that I'm kind of going, I'm still in the debasement area, but we're gonna bring this to modern day, okay? Remember we mentioned backed by gold? Well, once you have something that is backed by gold, you no longer have money. You have a currency. So once you stop using gold and silver and you start using something that is backed by gold and silver, you are using a currency. Okay, the powers of money, the money powers, they love currency because you can dilute currency a lot easier. This whole game started for America, back, we won't go into their banking wars that America went through. Okay, 3 or 4 of them, maybe 5. Okay, where America understood all of this. The founding fathers understood all of this, and so they were leery of central bankers, international bankers who wanted to control money. They wanted to control the issuance of money and of credit. Okay, one of these very powerful banking dynasties is the Rothschilds family. Okay, Amschel Rothschild is known for saying, "Give me the power to create a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." He could care less about laws. He cares about the money, because you can control the lawmakers if you can control the money. But these bankers love currency because they give you something that is backed by gold with these excuses like, "Oh, we need a money supply or a medium of exchange that is expandable," they'll say, or elastic. That just means that they can dilute it. It just means they want. See, this is why we got away from these gold and silver coins, because it's much harder to expand them, inflate them. A currency is easier, or something that's backed by gold is easier to expand or inflate or dilute without the public's knowledge. You see what I'm saying? And remember I said earlier that giving you something backed by gold was the beginning of the banking game. By taking gold and silver out of the market and replacing it with something that is much less valuable, that represents gold and silver. Okay, this is what can lead you to what we have. This is exactly what leads you to what we have today. And I want to bring these things up in this section just to give you a teaser so you can understand these kind of things. You see, this is what eventually leads you to what we have today, which is called a fiat currency. Fiat currency. Once again, just like the basement, if you've never heard of the word fiat and you don't know what it means other than the car, you are not dumb. You're not beneath the rest of us. This is not above your head. Believe it or not, guys, let me tell you something. I'm standing in front of this board. Believe it or not, the intellectuals of our world, the money powers of our world, do you know why we are not trained on stuff like this? It's because they say, well, this stuff is too complicated for common people to understand. I'm telling you they do. That is the answer. That's why you're not taught this in school. That's why you're not even taught this stuff in college. Because the money powers say, well, let's just reserve this for the people who are smart enough. Who's not smart enough to understand this? All you have to do is be reasonably intelligent. In my opinion, you can understand this. Fiat. It means worthless. You know what? Let's see if I can find that. I want to give you all. Let's hope we can find. Let's hope Webster has defined fiat for us. Okay, so we're going to go into this. We're going to break off of this video a little bit to just look up a word. Okay, here we are in the F's. We're at F-A. Fiat. Okay, an authoritative and often arbitrary order or decree. All right, that didn't help y'all. That didn't help y'all, so let me break that down. Well, let's just stick with the word decree. You remember I pulled that dollar out of my pocket in the early video and I said it only had value because it was given value? That's a decree. It's a fiat currency. It has no backing. There's nothing of value backing it. The only reason it has value is based on a government decree. The government said that if you are marketing and selling products and services in the United States of America, you must accept this in exchange for those services and goods, whether you like it or not. You got to accept this. And that's what gives this value. In addition to the fact that the government also says you must pay taxes and this is the only thing that we accept. You watch and mark my words and see the United States government start accepting gold and silver in the payment of taxes. They will. Okay, there are states right now, there are businesses right now that are putting the infrastructure in place to accept gold and silver in place of US dollars. Okay, but this is what leads you to a fiat currency. A currency that is backed by nothing. It used to be backed by gold. When we started out, even prior to the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, we were on the classical gold standard. money was backed by gold. It was a receipt for gold. You could go in to an exchange counter and you could give them your US dollars and say, give me the gold. You cannot do that anymore because money is not backed by gold. So the point I want you to see here is that in the beginning, before we were debasing anything, money was just a receipt for gold. It was something that was easier to transfer, easier to carry, so forth and so on. But it was a receipt for gold. The only value it held was that it represented gold. Now it does not represent gold. It has not represented gold since 1971, when President Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. Okay, we'll go into, well, I can tell you that now. He took us off the gold standard because the United States had all the gold, or majority of the world's gold after World War II. Okay, and they printed money. Every other country pegged their money to gold. I mean, to the US dollar. I'm sorry, to the US dollar. Eventually, they pegged their money to the US dollar. The US dollar was pegged to gold, right? Well, the US dollar is a receipt for gold. The government printed money like we would do if we had a counterfeit machine in our backyard. It's counterfeit. They went and printed more paper and ink, put together, print money. They printed more receipts than gold that they had. France was the first country to catch on to this. And they said, whoa, there's nowhere in the world that these United States of America has this much gold. They're printing more receipts than they have for gold. So I tell you what, I want my gold back. Here's all your dollars. Give me my gold. And nation after nation after nation was catching on to this from the year 1959 to 1971. Nation after nation was catching on to this. And they were asking this nation, America, give me my gold back. Here's your receipts, dollars. Give me my gold. Well, come Nixon's presidency, we were running out of gold. And it became clear to international bankers and, and the United States government, we couldn't continue to pay out this gold. Eventually, we'd run out of gold, and then there'd be a catastrophe. So what Nixon did was he unpegged the dollar from gold. It was the only way to save the dollar, is to take it off of gold. Now you can't redeem gold for your dollars. Now, there was no uproar. Why, I don't know. There's been many times throughout government where I was waiting for the public for an uproar. 9/11, I thought there'd be an uproar. There was no uproar, not big enough. Not big enough to go, hold up, you guys are lying. The same thing happened in 71 when Nixon took gold. Basically, the United States took other countries and held other countries' gold and gave them US dollars because they used the US dollars for international trade and not gold. And so they needed these US dollars. And the US said, well, we'll hold your gold, we'll give you US dollars as receipts. And then they printed more receipts than gold they had. They stole these nations' gold. But these nations did not revolt or in a big enough way to make any massive changes in the tide. But either way it goes, this is how the government does this. They debase the currency. In the case of the US dollar, we started out with the US dollar 100% backed by gold. You take $20 of US dollars into an exchange, you get $20 worth of gold. It went from there to I think in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act, it was a 45% reserve rate. So each dollar was redeemable for gold in 45% increments. So you could you could take a US dollar in $1 and get 45 cents worth of gold. That's what it represented. And then over time, it dropped and dropped and dropped until 1971, where now money was not representative of gold at all. And since then, we have been on a fiat currency as the rest of the world because they were pegged to the US dollar. They were already fiat currencies. They were pegged to the dollar, which was backed by gold. The money, remember I said early in the very first video, the money was always the gold and silver. The value was always the gold and silver. Well, now, none of these currencies are backed by gold and silver. They're just paper printed, given their value by a government decree, okay, which we looked that up as well. All right, so this is what the governments do to fund their wars. And what they want is some type of currency. At this point in time, they need a medium of exchange. They replace the sound money with cheap money. They need a medium of exchange that can be expanded, limitlessly. You can't print gold. You can't make gold. Once the gold's gone, it's gone. You got to mine for more of this stuff. Once again, remember video 1. Mining gold takes a lot of time, a lot of labor. It's difficult. It's risky. That's why it has such high intrinsic value. Well, paper, currency, as long as you got a printing machine and some ink, you can print it. And this is the form of currency that the governments like because they can always make more. And the public is less knowledgeable of it. The public is less knowledgeable of it. The public doesn't even necessarily realize that more money has flooded into the market like they would back in this day and age when you took in 1,000 coins and sent out 2,000. Because this 2,000 coins, they're a little darker than them pure coins. They're a little lighter than these pure coins, something that would alert the public that this coin is different from this coin. Well, you cannot do that with currency. We don't recognize that there is another $1 trillion in circulation. It's just another $1 trillion. They all look the same. They're all fiat. They're not backed by anything. And today we have digital money where money is created by a keystroke. It's just an entry in a computer system. There's nothing of true value there. Okay? I hope you've written this stuff down. Okay? Because we're going to erase. Because I want to point out something to my fellow Americans. If you're watching this video and you're not in America, your country probably has a similar thing as well. But I just want to point out that the U.S. dime, this is what I mean, guys. And so if you don't understand this yet, you'll understand it now. The U.S. dime prior to 1965 was 90% silver. Okay, it was 90% silver. The post-1965 dime, U.S. dime, was, 92% copper, 8% nickel. And it was plated with nickel so that it looked silverish. Okay, they always look silverish or goldish. This U.S. dime prior to 1965. This is 1965. This is when I believe it's Lyndon Johnson decided that silver was too valuable to be money. Now, how stupid is that? It's too valuable to be money. If it's valuable, it should be money. The only reason it's too valuable to be money is because you're spending more than you have. You're lying about your receipts. And so the silver was hoarded. The 90% silver 1965 coin, guys, I'm a firm believer in investing in precious metals. I and my family, we invest in precious metals. Okay, pre-1965 dimes, quarters, nickels, things of that nature. Investors are buying this stuff because it's 90% silver. This has a value, 90% silver, a U.S. dime, prior to 1965. A U.S. dime today has a value of about $2.10 worth of raw silver. The dimes that we use today and that we've used since 1965, that's 92% copper and 8% nickel, they have a value of about 2 cents. There's no more value in a U.S. dime than there is behind your stove or your refrigerator worth of copper or your air conditioner worth of copper. It's not worth the 10 cents that is printed on it. It's worth about 2 pennies. That is debasement at its best. Nothing is clearer. So I hope that is, I don't know what, what I can do to make you understand debasement if you don't understand it there. You know what I mean? And you can look back and form a history. This same process here, this took place in the coinage of the Roman Empire. Okay? In the Roman Empire in Jesus' day, you're reading the Bible. I've mentioned my new Bible study. You hear the Bible, you're mentioning denarii. Jesus was betrayed by Judas Iscariot for 30 pieces of denarii, 30 pieces of silver. It was silver. It was a silver coinage used by the Roman Empire. It was money. It was 75% silver in Jesus' day. 200 years after Jesus' death, that same coin that used to be 75% silver was 2% silver. Debasement. And I don't know any of you who are history buffs most people who know anything about history and who look at empires, most people know that the Roman Empire was never defeated. There was no army that came in and beat them. They kind of deteriorated from within. And it was largely economical. They stretched themselves beyond their means. And before you knew it, they were broke. I mean, when you're using, look at America. We've done the same thing. We're using coins as money that is not worth the number, denomination that is printed on it. A $20 bill is worth 2 pennies. But it's a $20 bill. That's about as economically backwards as it gets, folks. And it all comes from debasement. Debasement is stage 5. Debasement is where, at the end of the day, the government steals the wealth of the people by diluting your money supply. They take the real money out when it comes back into them and they give you garbage. That's the end of the day. That's as basic. That's as basic as it gets. It's when the government steals the wealth of the people. Debasement. The government steals the wealth of the people. We already know how the people created the wealth, right? Labor. We don't want to do any labor anymore. That's old. We don't want to do any labor. We want to work. We don't want to do any work. That's how you not get rich in today's society. Well, obviously so, because we're not dealing with real money anymore, but the debasement is where the government steals that wealth. That's the process through which they steal the wealth of the people. Debasement. They take all of our gold, all of our value. You see it in America in the 30s when they banned gold. And they took all the gold of the people's gold, put it in Fort Knox. Do you think that gold is in Fort Knox now? I think not. Fort Knox, I don't think they've been audited for many a decade. So, if you think the gold's there, maybe you do. They're not doing any audits to prove it, though. And the Federal Reserve has never been audited. It's beyond the powers of government. Government can't decide to audit it. It's just the way it works. It makes you wonder who put them in power, right? You remember we spoke earlier about politicians and their agendas? Why would someone in America in 1913, his name happens to be Woodrow Wilson, decide to give the Federal Reserve, a private bank, a private banking cartel, a group of bankers who work in coercion with one another, power to control the money and the credit of the United States? It was asinine, and he said so before his death. But that's what he did. At the end of the day, it led to debasement. And that is how we lose our money supply. We lose our value, I should say, our wealth. And it is happening now before your eyes. The greatest transfer of wealth known to man is happening before your eyes. This is stage 5. So we'll move on to stage 6. I hope you guys got this. Watch this one again if you need to get this. This one is the big one. Debasement is the big one. Once you understand this, you understand money. You understand what's going on with money. All right, and you definitely understand, when we talk about knowledge of money, about dropping out the rat race, you definitely understand that, what we hold in our pockets, virtually worthless. We'll see y'all in stage 6 to see what happens next. Once the money is debased, what happens next? All right, we'll see y'all in stage 6 to the next video.